technically there is no reservation, there's no reserved vacancies for any caste or creed. So even if sometimes, people have some politicians, sometimes, for certain narrow gains, they demand that let's make a regiment, please have a regiment of Yadavs or of Ahirs or something like that. So those are basically guided by narrow mindset.
Namaste, very good evening. Hello and welcome to Citti Media. I'm your host Sharan Citti. Joining us today for a very interesting conversation is Maj Gen Alok Raj. He's a veteran of the Indian Army. He has served for over 4 decades in extremely volatile environments, and he has had hands-on experience with counter-terrorism, where he served in places like Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast, Sri Lanka, and Punjab for that matter. And he has an extensive amount of experience that he carries with him. And today he is here to address a very sensitive issue, an allegation that has been raised by certain media organizations and activists against the institution of the Indian Army, saying that it's a very casteist institution and that the colonial hierarchy and the patterns have been overflown and continued after independence too. To debunk the entire myth, he's joining us today. Sir, namaste. First of all, my pranams to you for all the seva that you've done for this country. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It's an honor to have you here.
Jai Hind, Sharan. Thank you so much for inviting me for this talk. I feel privileged, and it's a very interesting issue. And I think a lot of myths have to be dispelled. And I think through your medium, through your channel, we shall be able to talk about this issue and clear the doubts in the minds of some of these activists or media houses. Because bulk of the country knows that if there's any apolitical organization in the world, in the country, or an organization which believes in all religions, it is the Indian Armed Forces or Indian Army. Therefore, I think you've chosen a very good subject, and I must compliment you for that.
Thank you so much. But, we wish that there was not a discussion or a debate on this, but unfortunately it calls for so, and we live in a democracy, so people are free to write what they want to. Which is why you see, whenever India celebrates something historic, like we have the Republic Day coming up, the timing is so sensitively and strategically chosen to defame the Indian Army. And I will play the devil's advocate today and throw certain allegations that have been propounded by certain groups. And I'm sure you can address any of these. Because of legal reasons, I'm not allowed to mention what piece or what organization we are talking about, but clearly you've gone through the article, and that's not just the only one. That's one of the recent pieces that's come out. But there have been many articles or pieces in the past that have indicated that the Indian Army has a certain caste-based hierarchy, which is even at practice today. What are your initial reactions to this?
So, I must actually, at the outset, mention that the only religion that the Indian Armed Forces soldiers believe in is desh prem or desh seva. And I do not doubt if there will be more than a handful of Indians who will kind of doubt this statement of mine, because every Indian has a full respect and is proud of Indian Armed Forces and Indian Army, and knows for sure that each one of us respect all religions. In fact, it is time tested and proven over decades that Indian Armed Forces respect all religions. You would have seen some of the ceremonies that we had, for example, National War Memorial, when it was dedicated by the Honorable Prime Minister on 25th of February 2019. We had the religious teachers from 4 religions who conducted the ceremony. So therefore, while bulk of the Indian Armed Forces troops may belong to the majority population, but then all religions are respected and worshipped equally in all our units and regiments. I've heard this statement, like you mentioned just now, that recruitment in the armed forces is open only to classified groups.
Yeah.
And it is certainly not for every Indian. I've also heard some saying that the the grouping in Indian Armed Forces is based on caste, religion, and it is discriminatory. I think both these statements are completely wrong. And the correct statement actually would be that in the Indian Army or in the armed forces, the overall process of recruitment is open to all classes. Every Indian citizen who's eligible based on their education qualification, the physical standards, they're meeting the criteria of physical standards and merit, are eligible to join the armed forces. Earlier, we had only few units or few corps where the women could join. Now we've slowly started women to also join in the personal below officers rank. For example, now lately you would have heard that we have women joining in the Corps of Military Police in the rank of NCOs. So therefore, if there's any organization in India where we have no reservation, it truly, in true sense, it is the Indian Armed Forces and in that Indian Army. In fact, the recruitment in the armed forces or especially in army is based on merit and domicile. Domicile meaning from certain regions. And of course, entire India is covered. Just that when we are carrying out recruitment is done through our zonal recruitment offices. And so when they recruit people based on recruitable male population of that particular region. So the vacancies are allotted as per that. And surely this recruitment is not based on caste, color, creed, or religion at all.
So actually, before we delve in further, can you give a little historical perspective for our viewers to understand where this allegation is particularly coming from?
Yes. So actually, the recruitment in the state forces of the princely states of India before the British era, before the colonial era, and also during the colonial era was based on caste. In fact, it is only after 1857, the episode of Gadar or the revolt or the Sipahi mutiny as it is called, that the Britishers realized that they will have to change the system, and then they went in for a system of recruitment based on martial races and non-martial races. But before that, it was completely caste-based by the princes of princely states and also by the Britishers. The Britishers raised infantry regiments of Indian Army based on existing idea of martial races. But however, that idea was put to rest after independence. We didn't follow it. And in fact, ever since independence, we have stopped all types of recruitment based on any caste, religion, or creed. It is all India based recruitment, and it has nothing to do with caste or creed. However, the regiments that were raised prior to our independence during the colonial era, their names, their titles have remained purely from the point of view of motivational aspects, tradition, and history. For example, Jat regiment or our soldiers in Jat regiment and infantry will not just have only Jats. The regiment will have troops even from other castes, Ahirs, Yadavs, Gujars. Rajput regiment, for example, will not only have Rajputs, it will have troops like Yadavs, Jats, Muslims. Rajput Rifles, once again, will have not just people from Rajput regiment or Rajput caste, but from different castes. So typically, as far as historical perspective is concerned, we just continued with these names, but post-independence, no regiment has been raised on the caste basis. Only a single infantry regiment was raised post-independence, and that was the Naga regiment. And this Naga regiment is affiliated to the Kumaon regiment, and it has troops not only from Nagaland, but also from some of the northeastern states, as also troops from Garhwal and Kumaon regiment. So if you notice, we have since independence not raised any new regiment on the names of caste. I will subsequently tell you about some of the new regiments that have been raised, but they are based on ethnic groups of different regions.
Right. So it is to fairly, it can be fairly concluded that, in a post-independent scenario, at least the political establishment has somehow challenged the arrangement with which this hierarchy was continued by the British earlier on. In a post-independent environment, how was the classification or the categorization of these regiments carried out, sir?
See, it is very interesting to note that the political establishment has never challenged or have questioned the system of recruitment of the Indian Army. Not once it has happened. Yes, there have been some activists, just as you mentioned just now. There have been some public interest litigations, but those are very isolated and very, very few. The government of India, the political parties, all political parties who have been in power have never questioned this, have always respected this, and have always believed, for the simple reason that they have understood that the cohesiveness that is brought because of the way the Indian Armed Forces or Indian Army regiments are classified brings in cohesiveness, and that is a battle winning factor. Therefore, in the larger interest of the country, for the operational purposes, they have allowed it to continue, and it has worked well. You were wanting to know about the classification. So yes,
classification, and then
this is a very good
also
question.
introduce some light into what reforms were carried out, perhaps to address many of these things.
Okay, so before I talk about the classification, I can talk about that there have been in 1985 post, you are aware of, we had traumatic times when some one or two units had issues, and thereafter it was felt that maybe we'll have an experiment wherein we'll have units of mixed class composition. Therefore, it will not only have Sikhs, it will have Jats, it will have Rajputs, it will have people from all India class. And however, and we continued with that experiment for some time, and it was tried only with some of the regiments and some of the units. But however, it was found that it didn't work well. There were lots of management issues, administrative issues, and most importantly, we found that the deficiency in the training of such mixed class forced us to give a rethought to it, or a rethink, and we felt that maybe we should continue with the old system of regimentation that was brought about post-independence. Therefore, this experiment was shelved, and we are thereafter continuing the way the Indian Armed Forces are composed. Now, there are four ways in which the Indian Army regiments are composed. We have single class, fixed class, mixed class, and all India class composition. In the single class, there are examples like you have Sikh regiment, you have Sikh light infantry regiment, Dogra regiment, Rajput regiment. So these are single class wherein a single ethnic class comprises troops from a single ethnic class comprise troops of a particular regiment or a unit. Then we have fixed class. In a fixed class, you have examples are like Rajputan rifles, where you have in a unit, you will have one company that of Rajputs, other company that of Jats, third company that of Muslims, and fourth company that of Ahirs. Or you could have two companies of Jats and two companies of Rajputs, or two companies of Rajputs, one company of Jat, one company of Muslims. So fixed class wherein unit as a homogeneous whole is from a particular region, but the troops are from different castes. But they are, so every subunit is very cohesive. And that is what is the need of the hour, that when you're fighting on the battlefront, especially the infantry regiments who have to indulge in hand-to-hand combat, if you have subunits who are very cohesive, it facilitates fighting, because linguistic similarities are very, very important.
Right.
It is very interesting to note that when you are indulging in combat, you in the times of crisis, the only language you remember is the mother tongue. And so if you have a very cohesive subunit that is fighting, it will be very easy for them to survive the 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 adversities of war and perform in the desired manner. And not to forget the motivation aspect. It is easy to motivate a homogeneous class on a particular cause. Therefore, a fixed class composition is important. Then you have mixed class composition, such as Punjab regiment. A Punjab regiment example of mixed class, wherein the troops come from primarily Punjab or Haryana region or Himachal region. But however, it will have mixed. There will be Sikhs, there will be Punjabis, there will be Dogras, but all will function in this Punjab unit. And finally, we have this All India class, which is for example is a Mahar regiment, wherein you have troops from across the country. Though of course mostly they'll be from, let's say, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, or such like region, but it can have troops from all India. All our our ordnance corps, army service corps, our signals, EME, all these corps of Indian Army are actually all India class. Now, many of our units of armored corps, artillery are also all India class. But other than infantry, some of our engineers, armored corps, and artillery units are also based on fixed class composition or sometimes mixed class composition.
Right. So in that sense, the allegations that have been thrown is baseless, is essentially what you're trying to say. So what is the current recruitment policy in that sense?
Yeah. Before that, can I just, since you had asked a question about as to have you also raised some new units or new?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry,
yeah,
that
so,
slipped my
yeah.
mind. Please
So
go
if
ahead.
if you just answer that also, that is very important.
Yes.
That we've also had new regiments or units raised, which are based on home and hearth concept. So we have raised post-independence. I mentioned about Naga regiment. Then the other regiments that have been raised are Ladakh Scouts, Sikkim Scouts, Arunachal Scouts. There are three very young regiments that have been raised. And these are based on home and hearth concept, which is basically son of soil concept. And they are basically meant to serve in the border regions. And each of these regiments are also affiliated to our other regiments. For example, like our Ladakh Scout is affiliated to Chakrif, that is Jammu and Kashmir Rifle Regiment. We have Garhwal Scouts who are affiliated to Garhwal Rifles. We have Kumaon Scouts that are affiliated to Kumaon Regiment. I already mentioned about Naga, that is affiliated to Kumaon Regiment. And they've been raised, their composition, once again, the troops, as I mentioned, are taken from the border areas based on the son of soil concept. But however, within these regiments, we also have troops from other areas. For example, I mentioned in Garhwal Scouts, there will not only troops from Garhwal region, but from other regions as well. So then another very fine example of having all India class troops is the Rashtriya Rifles. Rashtriya Rifles have already done a yeoman service in J&K, wherein they've been in fighting insurgency for a couple of decades and have really performed exceedingly well, killing a large number of terrorists and bringing down insurgency to manageable level in J&K. Now, these Rashtriya Rifle units also, you'll be happy to note that even though they are all India class, but each of these Rashtriya Rifle units are also affiliated to a particular regiment. For example, we have 2 RR or 19 RR, they are affiliated to Sikh Light Infantry Regiment. So there will be a large number of these troops going from these regiments, but there will be troops from other artillery armored units as well. And they have this experiment is another reform that was brought in and has done very well. Yeah, you were asking another question.
Yeah, so about how the Indian Army currently recruits people, so I think that should sort of give a conclusive evidence as to uh, what the answers to these allegations are, and perhaps we'll wrap up with that.
Yeah, okay. So I think that you're absolutely right that if we talk about what is the procedure. So to my mind, because we cannot go in details of the recruitment process, but I understand that the we have certain number of armed forces personnel retiring every year. So army personnel retire every year. So those many numbers have to be recruited, or depending upon the government policy, whether they have to increase the numbers or decrease the numbers, make army leaner and better. So they decide on the numbers. Now these numbers are then given to the army. We have the recruitment, DG recruitment, that is Director General of Recruitment at army headquarters level in Delhi, and in turn they work out the vacancies and they allot vacancies to the zonal recruitment offices, ZROs, which are in different places all across the country. And they are only given numbers. They are not told that we require so many Jats, so many Sikhs, so many such people from so and so caste, so and so creed. No, nothing like that. Only numbers are given. However, these numbers could be given also in categories. For example, they may say that we require so many tradesmen. Tradesmen are personnel who do certain trades like chefs, washermen, uh, safai wala or hygiene, who look after barber, such like things. So they are tradesmen. So the vacancies are given in categories for tradesmen, for general duty soldier, for clerks, and for technical personnel. Because for each of these different categories, the education qualification, the age criteria is different. For general duty cadre, for GD soldier, that is general duty soldier, you require young people, you require physically fit people, their physical standards to be highest,
Yeah.
but they need not have technical qualification or education. Whereas for technical services, or such as electrical and mechanical engineering services, or engineers, or for signals, require technical people. So you require personnel or youth who are technically qualified or have certain qualifications in technical bent of mind. So therefore, for each of these different categories, you have different age criteria, physical standards criteria, as also the educational qualification criteria, and of course the selection process. So vacancies are given based on these different categories to these ZROs. Then who in turn thereafter carry out recruitment process based on recruitable male population index. And thereafter they carry out, when they carry out the recruitment, the vacancies are published for different categories. And when people apply, there is no yardstick, there is no selection process wherein the caste of an individual is seen. That is not seen at all. Since that is not seen at all, the allegation that a particular castes are favored is absolutely ridiculous and is absolutely incorrect.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. And I hope this puts a lot of these accusations to rest. And you've addressed everything in detail. You've started with how it happened with the British and then went on to the post-independent times and then new regiments that have been formed. Even for me, it was very educational.
Yeah, and I must conclude by saying that technically there is no reservation, there is no reserved vacancies for any caste or creed. So even if sometimes people have, some politicians sometimes for certain narrow gains they demand that let's make a regiment, please have a regiment of Yadavs or of Ahirs or something like that. So those are basically guided by narrow mindset, and it will actually, even if you have a regiment like Yadav regiment, it will not really increase the employment for Yadavs, because they're already included. They're already included in the recruitment process. And so therefore, if you separately cater vacancies for them, the other vacancies will get reduced. So it will really not make any material difference in the numbers of vacancies for a particular caste or creed. So I thought I must mention this before we close.
Thank you
so much. It was nice interacting with you.
Absolutely, sir. It was an honor to have you here, and I hope you
Same.
can join us again.
Thank you. God bless you.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.